My guests today are actors David Zumbrunnen and J. Martrice Henderson, and one of the absolute best films of the year, The Problem with the Hero. Now, you've likely seen David's portrayal of Charles Dickens in The Night Before Christmas Carol, and has now been seen by millions nationally and internationally on public television. Now, additionally, public television audiences have seen him as a performer along with his wife, Serena Eberhardt, in the national broadcast of War Bonds, the songs and letters of World War II, and as a frequent spokesperson for the UNC TV in North Carolina. Now, J. Martrice Henderson is a member of the Actors Equity Association, and he was featured in Y'all All in the Dance on Widow's Row by Sam Art Williams at the National Black Theater Festival. There he also worked with TV legend Ted Lang in Blues in My Coffee, and most recently appeared as Daddy Number One in The Supremes, at Earl's All You Can Eat, and at one time the #1 feature film streaming on Hulu. He has also toured with EBZB Productions as Richard Wright in Native since 2017, which we're about to talk about. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome executive producer and actor David Zumbrunnen and actor J. Martrice Henderson, and again, one of the most powerful feature films you'll ever see, The Problem with the Hero, to the show. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, goodness, Ward. After
Wow.
that introduction,
I was not expecting that. Oh, man.
the expectations in this
Jeez.
interview.
Well, hopefully one of these days, because you two are so brilliant on screen, I want to be the one that opens up the envelope and say, and the Oscar goes to, oh, we have a tie.
Oh,
No,
wow.
in my dreams, I'd be supporting actor. It would be Jay. Jay Matrice would be the.
Oh, no, not at all.
I'll
Not at
open
all.
up the envelope
Totally.
with you for him.
We're competing, David. We're competing for the same Oscar.
I would say so. This film has two leading characters, and that's both of you. But again, this is truly one of the best feature films I have seen, not just this year. I mean, I haven't seen a film this good since Green Book, and it won 3 Oscars in 2019.
Oh,
So
jeez.
that's where that's where I place this film. But explain to me, and I'll let both of you take turns here. Did The Problem with the Hero start out as a stage production before becoming a film?
So I'll jump in first, and then Josh can fill in when he came into the picture with this project. But number one, not only am I taken aback by the intro, but thank you, Ward, for having us. We're really grateful to be a part of this interview and for you to include us in your schedule on this. So this is a pretty. Some folks have described this project over the last 12 to 13 years as rather meta, and so forgive me if I or indulge me a little bit as I talk about the layers that go on with this particular project and in this film. This is a film based on a film screenplay adapted from 2 stage plays. All right. And those stage plays were Native, which EBZB and both of us have toured the East Coast of the United States pre-COVID, and now have just remounted it post-COVID for the first time last fall in a co-production with Ragtime Players, of which Josh, Jamie Drees, and I call him Josh, so forgive me, but he is artistic director of Ragtime Players, Reclaiming Our Time Productions. So that's one stage play from which it's been adopted, but also an unpublished and never performed play called The Problem of the Hero, which was written by Richard Wright, which you can find, I believe you can find the original manuscript or scans of the original manuscript in the Beinecke Library at Yale. And that's how we found it. Or rather, I should say, how the one of the screenwriters and the playwright of Native, Ian Finley, found it. With those layers, the stage play itself, Native, is about how these 2 gentlemen, Richard Wright and Paul Green, 2 literary giants of the 20th century, they came together to adapt Richard Wright's best-selling and groundbreaking novel Native Son for the stage, and the particularly Broadway stage. So with all those layers initially in how this project was conceived and where we went with it, I think, and Ward, I'm sure will speak to this, but there's layers of the friendship between the two gentlemen that developed, and also socio-political issues of that time, which mirror many of the scenarios that we find ourselves living in the times in which we live today as well. Uh, and so with those layers, there are those nuances to it. How we came to actually pursue doing this story, or how we pursued wanting to tell this story. The Paul Green Foundation is a foundation here in North Carolina, and if you live in North Carolina, by the way, I should say that it's hard to escape. Those of us of a certain generation and older, it's hard to escape not knowing who Paul Green was. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. Uh, Abraham's Bosom, I believe he won the Pulitzer for that in the early 20th century. Another groundbreaking piece. Uh, a great human rights activist, peace activist, social justice advocate. It's hard to live in North Carolina and be raised and not know who this man was. A lot of people don't know who he is. And many of us of a certain generation also know who Richard Wright was. Well, when the Paul Green Foundation approached us, they were trying to enhance the awareness of Paul Green's work. He's primarily known in North Carolina and the Southeast, but not many people know about him beyond that. And so we had worked with the Paul Green Foundation on other projects, and they approached us about enhancing the visibility of Paul Green's work as time has evolved. Well, as Serena and I, Serena Ebbhardt, who is artistic director of EBZB Productions, and my wife, as you mentioned, we kind of knew about the Richard Wright Paul Green collaboration, but we didn't really know that much about it until we really dug into it and we started to find out more about this friendship and this collaboration and how compelling it was. And so we decided that we would adapt the stage play. And then we started to approach both the Paul Green Foundation and the Wright estate, the Wright family, about doing this project. And there were a lot of discussions that mirror very much some of what is in the film, actually. But that's how this play evolved. And we recognized that not many people would know who Paul Green was, but I think we were a bit surprised by how many people of certain ages or certain generations are not aware of who Richard Wright is and his groundbreaking work as an African American novelist in the 20th century. I think it was James Baldwin who labeled him or called him the godfather of African American literature. But as we started to tour it, and in the film, as we've done the film festival circuit, we've been rather surprised about how many people do not know who either of these gentlemen are, and particularly Richard Wright. But a lot of the emphasis when we started was to make sure that people were aware of these two remarkable gentlemen and their life and their work, and that's how this evolved. And forgive me and thank you forgive me for going on so long, and thank you for indulging me. But that's really where that was how this process germinated.
Well, that brings up a scene in this movie in the balcony, which we'll get into a bit later, but it is one of the most powerful scenes in the whole film. And what you just said backs up the dialogue. And in part of that scene where Paul Green says, you're a celebrated writer. And Richard goes, no, you're a celebrated writer. I'm a Negro writer. Meaning that's how the public will see this. That backs up what you said, because if a lot of people don't know who Richard Wright is, it goes back to what his words were in the film. And when I saw the scene, I played that scene more than twice, I'll tell you that. Because everything he said, I was really heartbroken, because the dialogue mirrors a lot of things that still happen today. But it backs up with what you just said. People in North Carolina knew who Paul Green was, but who was Richard Wright? And the words that Richard Wright spoke actually came to pass.
If you'll indulge me some more, but yes, at some point, Jay Madrice is going to get to talk about this.
I want to hear Jay talk about, because that scene is amazing.
I'll let him talk about that scene, but as we were going, so we started filming in December. We did principal photography in December 2019 and January of 2020, pre-COVID, right? Pre-COVID. So we had been doing the conceptual pre-production work in 2018, 2019. We filmed it. Then we had exteriors, we had pickups, we had various other shooting to do, some groups film shots, but COVID shut us down, right? And so over time we it became this process of doing post and edit and music and composition. All it was all happening in this. It wasn't a linear narrative process at all. We just had to adjust as we kept getting shut down and then figuring out how to start again. Along the way, here I am, along with Serena, but it was particularly me, similar to the play Native. I was like, we have to get this play done. I'm sorry, we have to get this film done. We have to get it out there. Our window is closing on this. Well, Sean Dozer, the director, great work. I mean, so wonderful to work with. Steve Mulligan, the cinematographer, director of photography. Ayanna Johnson, the producer. Serena. Everybody had to keep reminding me. They said, David, calm down, simmer down. This piece is this film. This piece is going to be relevant, and it's going to continue to be relevant as we move forward. And in fact, it's going to become even more and more deeply relevant as we move forward with this. And sure enough, that's happened. So I'm sorry, I had to interject because you talk about the balcony scene, and the resonance and the relevance just continues to deepen as we move forward with this.
Well, Jay, when because what I loved about this story was you're bringing in two stories that are synergistically blending together: Native Son, The Problem with the Hero. When you heard the story of Paul Green and Richard Wright for the first time, what were the first thoughts that you had?
So I have to admittedly say that I was one of the ones who didn't know who Richard Wright was. Came into this, right? I don't know if that tells my age or my educational background, but I wasn't aware who Richard Wright was. But then as I found out about him, I was influenced by the people that he influenced. I was a Langston Hughes fan, James Baldwin fan. Then to find out that this man is like who really grandfathered them into our culture, Black culture and Black literature. So when I was able to find that out, and then I went back not too long ago, and I found out that I was introduced to a film in the 8th grade that was dramatized with Tina LaFord. I can't think of the name. It was Tina LaFord, Danny Glover, and Tate Donovan, about a white salesman who comes in and he has an affair with the Black woman, and it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And it's based off of a Richard Wright short piece. And then I went back and said, this man has influenced me more than I ever had thought. So when I came into this production back in 2017. I was like, to be honest, I just wanted to get the job, book a job. As actors, we want to book, right? So I went in not knowing anything, and I did a Langston Hughes piece, ironically. And once I got into we got into rehearsal and got into the meat of this story, I was like, wow, these are words that my father probably has wanted to say, my grandfather has wanted to say. These are the expressions that men of my culture have wanted to say. And now I get a chance to say that for all of them. So there was a weight of that, right? Like I'm standing on shoulders, but there's also people who are depending on me to express this in a way that's both probably controversial, but also much needed, right?
Well, how did you, as an actor and learning who Richard Wright was and the words that he spoke, how did you embody and bring him to life on screen?
So there's always research. Have to do your research. I went and purchased and read Black Boy, which is semi-autobiographical of his life. There's not a lot of him per se speaking. There is a production, I believe, of him actually portraying Bigger Thomas in Native Son. I did find that. But a lot of what I found was people who were talking about him. So you get a lot of perspective about people who talk about you, who know about you, and who actually want to express what they know. So I was able to kind of configure who this man was. His daughter, even Julia Wright, has referenced him as the Black Edgar Allan Poe, right? So that there alone there's a lot of weight and depth to that. So having to find those nuances and say that this man was a literary genius, right? And as someone who loves literature and loves words, as an English minor and theater major, like this was my guy, and I was glad to be introduced to him.
Well, now with The Problem with the Hero, or was it Native Son?
Mhm.
Which one was the stage production before it became the film?
So the state now Native Son, published in 1940. That was Richard's novel. Then Native Son, the stage play, directed by Orson Welles, after he had just finished filming Citizen Kane, by the way. uh, then premiered in March of 1941 on the Broadway stage. And then our stage adaptation of this story premiered in we workshopped it in 2015, then premiered it in 2017 and started touring then. And I'll just add that when Josh came into the room in his audition, we knew we had our Richard Wright. He opened his mouth and we knew we had our Richard Wright. We just immediately. But so we toured the stage play Native, and then the film screenplay was adapted in 2018, 2019 into the film itself, The Problem of the Hero. Did
So
that
was
answer
the,
your question?
yeah. So what? So that means your dialogue was you already embodied the dialogue in the stage play. So when it came to actually shoot the film, did it seem more natural to give that type of performance to both of you?
Josh, you want to dive in? We're
Well,
going to give some
so
more information than maybe we should, but go ahead.
yeah. So from 2017 to 2019, 2020, we were very familiar with the stage play, the script that Ian had written. So we had those, we David and I, which is what I love. David has become like a big brother mentor to me. So we had this comfortability with each other, wherein if we flub a line here and there, we can kind of pick it up. We get to the set and there are new lines that are introduced sometimes right before we shoot a scene, and it's like, whoa, what is this? So, because for me, this is my first feature film. So, going into this, the nerves and like we're learning everything new as we go, and then you're giving me a whole new sheet of like lines to remember. And what you don't see is probably while David's shooting his scenes, I'm off on the corner learning mine to come and do my counters and all that. But what I was so grateful for is that Ayana Johnson, who was one of the executive producers, she's also an actor, so she understood like I need a moment, just to go get myself together because this is brand new to me. We love the lines from, well, me personally, I loved the lines from the play, and what this adaptation does with James A. Hodge, it just adds to that. So both beautiful, beautiful, powerful words. It was a learning curve for sure, but one that I think we did well. Hopefully,
Well, for both of you, now I was talking to a friend of mine who is an actor. He was able to. He finally got to become a lead in a feature film, and it was heavy dialogue as well. And he had to memorize 115 pages of dialogue. So, how many pages of dialogue did each of you have to learn for this film?
So Warren, it was like working on a soap. We were getting new sides every every morning, right?
every
but
morning.
but I think crucial to our being able to adjust and adapt. Look, Sean Dozier, I've mentioned these folks again, and I'll mention them several times. Sean Dozier, the director, Steve Milligan, and Ayana Johnson, they really created such an atmosphere of ensemble, a working culture of ensemble for all of us, and that's cast and crew alike. And it was very much how Serena Ephart has directed us in the stage play, and so it was that brotherly bond that we now have, Josh and I, uh, in our work beforehand, that allowed us to adapt pretty readily to the different rhythms that we were being given every morning. I mean, there are different rhythms, and there are words coming out of our mouth in each scene that you're seeing that are completely fresh to us, absolutely fresh. And there are some that are similar, but the rhythms are very different. But we were able to adjust simply because this was an ensemble working environment in every aspect of that you can think of.
Well,
Yeah,
much of the setting of the film is inside a theater. It's either on stage, backstage, or from the seats. As actors, did filming your scenes seem more like a stage production than a film?
I would say so. Well, I think because the Stage play is just the two characters. So the film opens that up a lot more, and we can kind of see what happens. All the mechanics of backstage. It's a show in and of itself. For any actors, theater actors who know, like there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you never really realize. And I think that this film gives the chance to see that.
Yeah,
You know,
there was. Oh no, go ahead, David.
I was just, when I think a stage doing something for the stage, we filmed the stage play, by the way, as well, and that will,
It-
once the film has its run and is becoming established out there now, we will release the stage play filming. But for me, filming for doing a stage play and then filming is really different because you got a camera in your face and you got people all around you and you've got lighting being adjusted and things change, things are moving all around you as you are being rather intimate in your communication, in your expression. So it's a very different experience for me. But yes, there is that performative nature that Josh mentioned. That does exist naturally because of the storyline.
Yeah, there are three very intense discussions between both of you in this film. There is also scenes of which both of you are backstage separately telling a story to another character. I noticed that Mr. Wright tells a story of a tragedy when he was a child, but also mentions some contention that he has with Mr. Green. But you could tell he really likes him. There's just some things he's still trying to understand. So Mr. Wright likes to read people. But then Mr. Green tells a story of sticking up for Mr. Wright because of a threat by the KKK, but a story he never told Mr. Wright. When I went back to look at both of the two separate scenes, here is Mr. Wright telling a story that's very painful for him to tell. But then the story of Mr. Green is in complete contrast, but he's telling a story in which he wants to save Mr. Wright. And I thought, wow, what an incredible difference in the stories. But in a way, there's an emotional connection to those stories from both men. So I thought both scenes were brilliant on both of your parts.
I'm just well. Thanks again. Thank you again, Ward. Really, I mean, my gosh. But I will also note uh, the screenplay and the writing by James A. Hodge and Ian Finley and Ian's work at the stage play as well. It's a gift that these two gentlemen have given us such a gift with their writing, and a lot of credit. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's an ensemble environment, which I've mentioned, but these two gentlemen gave us such beautiful words. They really did.
I was curious because those two scenes also shows this underlying tone and theme in all of the other discussions in the film because Mr. Wright never seemed to understand Mr. Green's outlook as seeing all men equal because Mr. Wright knew that they were not. So for you, Jay, the dialogue in this film is very tense.
Mhm.
So and I know that both of you have done these roles numerous times. Of course, like you said, you got thrown new lines when you showed up on set. Um, as an actor, do you just focus on the scene, or is there a part of you that embodies the whole of the film?
Well, I think being that we had the advantage of doing the stage play for so long, that we could see the piece as a whole. A lot of times when you film movies, you film it in segments and it's not linear. So the film aspect of it, had I not had that foundation, it probably would have been a bit more difficult. But that scene in particular, actually, the story that he tells is in Black Boy, which is some autobiographical of Richard Wright. So I had that knowledge as well as the relationship knowledge between Paul Green and myself. So I wouldn't say that the scene was easy because of that, but I had the foundational use of the emotion to convey that. But again, the words are very tense. The emotions are tense. You just have to be able to find the nuances within that. And again, blessings from Ian Finley and James A. Hodge to give, because an actor is only as strong as the material that he's given most times.
Yeah,
And the material that It's golden.
Yeah, because both of you, the thing, and one of the things I was focusing on in each of those separate scenes,
Mm,
I was watching the phrasing, the
mm.
pacing, and you literally grab the audience, and the audience is hanging on every word
Well,
because we're wanting. No, go ahead, Jay.
I just have to thank the University of North Carolina at Greensboro for theater training for that. No, I'm joking. That's a joke. I'm
I,
grateful.
I
I'm
was going to
grateful.
say
Yeah,
we
that
were
just
hanging on
came.
every
That
word.
just came from your natural talent, right?
Well, hopefully, a bit of a mixture of the two, probably. Hopefully,
I was
I
going to
mean,
say
I think I'm good
we were
fighter
hanging on
too.
every word too.
Well,
I mean, and I mean that authentically and genuinely. I really do. But yeah. Go ahead.
well, here's what I loved about the beginning of the film,
Mm,
because the beginning of the film really sets up another scene later in the film, and the audience needs to pay very. So, ladies and gentlemen, you when you see this film, you have to pay attention. I want you to pay attention to the opening scene. So we see the scene outside the prison, but it's really the scene that goes to Mr. Green, or actually goes to you, David, in which you're in your hotel room on the phone. The other side of that conversation is going to appear later in the film. I love the way stories are told in which either the beginning and the end, or the beginning and maybe in the middle, are bookend some way. But it takes a keen eye to understand and to see that's what it really is, because it plays, it goes along with the theme of the discussions with Mr. Wright and Mr. Green. So I want to bring up the very first intense conversation, and it's where Mr. Wright says they're both on stage. There's the bed on stage, and Mr. Wright says, I want the audience to realize in which the cage he was raised, talking about the convicted young man. He says, his thoughts and actions are confined by society that made him. But then Mr. Green comes back and goes, characters are defined by the choices they make. Right there, we see the differences in their beliefs, but Mr. Wright based his upon life lived. Mr. Green based his on visual assumption. Correct?
You go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
But
Because
I mean,
we could go on for a good couple of hours about all this.
I think one of the first questions we had was the question of humanism versus determinism, that's one of the first conversations that we had within the play, and I think you sum it up very, very well. I was hanging off every word of yours as well, sir. So I don't know if you're an actor, but you might want to look into that. But yeah, for sure, there's that question, and it gives the, I don't want to say the polar opposites, but it gives the opposite opinions of how both of these men are approaching this subject,
Well,
for sure.
okay, you bring up something. Okay, you said polar opposites, but what is incredible in this film, they're not really
Right. Yeah.
polar opposites. It's based on, when I look at Mr. Wright as a character, or I should say, they're both real. So
Mm,
he is coming across in what he knows is
to be true.
fact. Every
Mhm.
word that ever came out of his mouth in this film, no one can deny. Mr. Green, when I'm looking at the dialogue coming out of his mouth, I'm sitting there going, we are ignorant, aren't we? You know, and I hate to say it, I just had this discussion with another director yesterday with his documentary, because it was based on race, and and it's what breaks my heart and disturbs me, and everybody should be disturbed, is the fact that here we are in a peace period, 1940s. The things that are the things that are said, the things that are done, have not really changed in the last 85 years.
So several thoughts, Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Number one is, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. But I say this practically at every conversation that we have, post screening, what have you. The conversation we're having right now has mirrored every single conversation we've had after every screening at the film on the film festival circuit. It is mirroring conversations of people who are now seeing the film, when they see it streaming. It has mirrored our post show discussions in native. This conversation is mirroring conversations that occurred on set every day. We would have people come on who were only, sometimes you feel like you're being, if you're only there, if you're a featured player, you feel like you're being helicoptered in and you're brought in, and then you go a couple of days later, you're out of there. Well, we would have some crew or some folks come in, and, and some people, we had a couple of news crew people come in to interview us, some local news crews, and people would start watching what was going on, the filming, the dialogue, and they were just enthralled by, and it would ask, what is going on in this story? What is going on in this film? And then the conversations would proceed from there. And we had college interns show up, and they were just like, where did this story come from? I've never heard of these people. That being said, and because as you noted, the resonance and the relevance continues to deepen as we continue to move forward since the 1940s and before the 1940s.
Yeah, well, from that scene on, there is a tug of war of ideas and facts and presumptions. What I love about that is as an audience member, you're seeing that it blends together. And it's, for some people, it's hard for them to decipher, to break down, and realize that a lot of our thinking has been wrong all these years.
Well, all that said, what you've just articulated and what Josh has and what I've just said, I think it would be disingenuous of us, particularly those of us who are in the creative part of this film, us two included here. We're still processing. I say it all the time. We're still processing this every day. Every time we talk with someone about the film, and they want to talk to a lot of people really want to talk to us about the film, and we're still processing because, I mean, my gosh, the last 5 to 6 months in this country, and the political rhetoric, the discourse, some of the decision making that's being made are clearly part of what you're talking about. And regarding Paul, and regarding the what is being expressed by Paul Green, I have continued. I go back and forth on this in regards to Paul's experience. And here we have a remarkable man, a remarkable social justice advocate. And some of the stories, there are a couple of stories I think that are revealed in the film and the play about some of his activism. But I think, yeah, Paul, this incident, this issue, and this whole friendship, this collaboration over about a year or two, the result of it haunted Paul for the rest of his life. There are interviews with NPR, and I don't want to give too much of a spoiler about the very end of the film, but and you know what I'm talking about. But in interviews with NPR and other biographies and other correspondence, this scenario and this friendship and how it unfolded haunted Paul for the rest of his life. I could make a thousand guesses as to why. And I don't want to go too deep into it.
Because I don't want to give certain elements away. Because I'm trying to be careful here, because I know there's millions of people who have not seen this film. But I want to ask you, Jay, because when people have seen this film at a film festival, what are the questions that you get?
Why doesn't he understand? And it's very, very, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I can't answer for Paul, but I think their question is more of, you're telling him everything that he needs to know, and he's still not getting it, right? And they want to know, how else could my character express it that could be understood by Paul's character. So that's one of the biggest questions that I get. Like, why isn't he getting it? Right?
Okay, hold that thought.
Mhm.
Because I had this I had a similar discussion about a week ago when it comes to period films. I tell people, when you watch a period film, do not watch a period film based on your thought process in 2025. You need to understand that the character is in this case, the 1940s. Mr. Green, he's patriotic. They're coming in. The war, World War II is about to happen. Everybody's coming together, but then here's Mr. Wright understanding how the public, the white public, views the black man. And so he's carrying on 200 years of things into the 1940s. And so when I watch a period film, I'm making sure when I watch it that I'm looking at that the characters are embodying the very time period, the thought process, the dialogue. So when people at a film festival say, well, why didn't he do this or that? I'm like, well, you're looking at it wrong. You got to figure out that it's 1940. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's difficult for a lot of people to do, to separate that. Because I know as a grown up, I go back and watch some of the stuff that I watched as a kid. I'm like, that was inappropriate. There's no way that would pass today. But again, we're looking at it with modern eyes. So I think because people go into this because they see that it's two sides that are being argued. I think they want to find, or they want to identify, which one is right. And I think that may be a disservice to what you need to get from the film.
That's right.
Right, for sure.
Ian Finley often, and because this question comes up to Ian a lot, by the way, and Ian often answers. This is when he was writing a lot of his writing in this project. He was like, I wanted to explore the friendship and how it evolved in that time frame. And he said, when it really comes down to it, they're both right in their own way. As harsh an assessment as that might be for some folks, they're both right in their own way. When we premiered it at the Santa Fe Film Festival, I was nervous as a cat. My legs were shaking because I didn't know how. I just sat in the back and I didn't know how people were going to receive that. I thought, Lord, all these people, we got a nice house here. They're going to walk out. People are going to start going, oh yeah. I don't need this. Well, they stayed, and the questions just kept coming, right? And one gentleman, an older white gentleman, asked me something regarding Paul's experience, and I said, Paul reached out to Richard, I think within 6 months to a year after this whole situation unfolded, right? Richard never responded, and I just kind of, I don't know if I was glib or flippant about it, but I said, and who can blame Richard for not wanting to reach back out? Well, the gentleman immediately said, how can you say that? How can you say that? And I said, well, I said again, I'm still processing this piece, but I noted, I said, when you consider you have an African-American who is a successful novelist who is being recognized for that, but also facing situations where he can't even use certain entrances still that white people use into public buildings. When you have a black man facing this, and you've tried to encourage this man to see your point of view, and yet he still refuses to go there completely. How would you react? Would you reach back out to this gentleman who's wanting to reach back out to discuss it even more? I mean, Richard had moved on to some other projects. He had other things to do as well, just like Paul. But I frankly don't blame Richard.
I think that's the mindset. I think Mr. Wright moved on to another project, but I still think that he held in his heart great respect and maybe a quiet connection and friendship with Mr. Green. I'm not gonna give it away, but ladies and gentlemen, when you see the movie, I want you to pay attention. There's a scene which it's at the end, but it's only where the camera is focused on Mr. Wright in the audience. When you see that scene, you need to pay attention to the words that are spoken. When you do that, it was that point when I knew that Mr. Wright kind of gave a little wink to Mr. Green. And all I'll say is just pay attention to the word priest and you just take it from there. So, and because when I heard, I went, oh, and I'm like, oh, I loved it. I loved it so much.
You are on it, Ward. You are so
For sure.
on
I mean,
it. Oh, you are on point.
man.
Yeah. But I watched that scene a couple of times. Because like I would watch it when the camera's focused on Jay, I'm watching. You're feeling it. But then I watch it again so I can. The rest of my vision is looking at the audience behind him, which is very diverse, by the way. And then there's that one moment where it gets quiet and he doesn't know he's now Mr. Wright is caught in that split second. Is they gonna love it or they gonna hate it? And then it just moves on. And so we'll leave that there. But what I loved is Richard Wright. I truly believe this with all my heart, that Richard Wright was the precursor to Alex Haley. Because as they disagreed about the ending of the play, Mr. Wright was fine if the audience was offended, yet changed by it. I love the Mr. Wright character because he is giving the same speech again that we need to hear today. And so to hear that he was fine with the audience being offended, and then bringing up that one play, he goes, oh, they got mad at me because I wanted the slaves to be whipped on stage. And then when I thought of that, I went, that was Alex Haley in Roots. He was not afraid. But then Mr. Green has the idea of, look, this is theater. You're catering to the audience. You want them to come back night after night. So part of him was thinking marketing side and promotion. Mr. Wright was like, you tell the story and let it fall where it's going to lay. And I agreed with Mr. Wright because let the audience be changed by it. And this movie, it follows those exact words.
And I think that lends to the brilliance of Mr. Wright as well, that he could foresee that those. There's a book that came out not too long ago, The Man Who Lived Underground, which was written many, many years before, and it just came out, and it was talking about police brutality, which was way before his time. And I think of like the Rodney King and the George Floyd, like those, being that we had actual camera evidence of those events happening and the changes or the mayhem that they caused. I think that's what Richard was saying. Let them see it, or they can know that this is actually what's happening, and to not shy away from it.
Exactly. I had that same discussion yesterday with another filmmaker, and because I brought up the fact that with Rodney King, why can't we all get along? But when I look at that and hear that one statement, and if I apply it to the problem of the hero, in this case, here is a collaboration, a friendship of some sorts, where two men from the opposite sides of the spectrum, opposite sides of the track, so to speak, or what we would say, and still be able to agree to disagree without making it actually personal. But there are scenes here where they kind of get personal, don't they?
We were asked a couple of times at a couple of film festivals conversations. What I think one was a film director who was having his film screen there, and the question was, did they really talk like this? And I responded, they most certainly did. They most certainly did. You can read it in their correspondence. You can read it in their writing. Sometimes you get there's a great many. Only because I did the research specific to Paul, or I focused that. But I think there are a great many more recordings and interviews with Paul, audio and oral history recordings. But you can just listen to it and you can hear him speak exactly the way, with the same phrasing, the same words that they did in this film, and I would say similar to Richard. I mean, Richard, it's fascinating to watch some of the footage of Richard Wright, what that which exists, but I mean, I told both the Paul Green Foundation and Richard Wright family, I said, I want to be like y'all's families. I don't want to go through the struggles that I don't necessarily need to go through the struggles that you've
Yeah.
gone through. But I mean, the brilliance of both of these gentlemen, and I promise you, having met many of the family members of both families, it's in the DNA. I mean, they all are just on top of it.
Well,
Kind of like
Jay.
Ward Bond about this film.
well, Jay, let me ask you, because if you have met some of the family members as well as David did, what did they think of your portrayal of Mr. Wright?
I haven't met them myself yet, but I have heard they were impressed with the with the film overall. So that just put a stamp on. That's the word I wanted to hear. To hear that Miss Julia Wright was, pleased, because I know they're very protective, as need be, of his estate, and so to hear that she was pleased with it that's my Oscar almost.
Well, there's a scene that I literally played it back a few times because, and ladies and gentlemen, if you are an actor, maybe you want to act, maybe you're going out for auditions, you need to watch this scene multiple times to learn how to act.
Oh
Now,
God! Oh,
in
jeez.
this, now this one
What
goes
scene
to
is
you,
this?
Jay. This one goes to you, because what I loved about the scene is you're the main character and David is in the background because he's watching. So you're on stage, and so when Mr. Max asked Mr. Wright about his suit, I was blown away. The scene by itself was a lesson in acting.
Oh gosh!
Mr. Wright, no, but it's your character that pulls this off with brilliance. So Mr. Wright coaches the actor, and he says, because he's going through these different, so that Mr. Max is going through these different tones, and Mr. Wright goes, not hostile, amiable, surprise, mask the suspicion. And you say this with such Sidney Poitier type delivery, and then to watch the actor who plays Mr. Max, and ladies and gentlemen, in one scene, he delivers the same lines 3 different ways. And I said, that's an acting lesson.
Derek Ivey,
Derek
great
Ivey,
actor,
Derek Ivey,
great.
for sure.
I mean, this man can do anything. He really can. He's
Sure.
based here in the Raleigh-Durham area. He's remarkable, and widely respected here in creative circles for obvious reasons, as you now know, Ward. But yeah, he does great work. Yeah.
Now, did he do all of that dialogue and all of that change within the same take?
It wouldn't surprise me.
You go ahead, Josh.
I can't recall. But knowing Derek and Derek's work, it wouldn't surprise me if it was just one or very few takes. I would imagine.
I mean, it was like the light switch. Just the moment you would say words to him, he changed just the way it was delivered, the tone, the meaning. And as actors, I mean, the scene proves that there are layers to acting when it comes to tone of dialogue. And in this sense, appear friendly, but still give that slight air of suspicion. And I was just like, I was blown away just by the acting, because I was like, every actor needs just to watch that and think. I think acting coaches need to take that scene and cause their students to do that scene and to be quick on their feet to change the tone and meaning immediately. That's an exercise.
Again, I would credit again the environment, the working environment, the culture we had on set. Sean, Steve, Ayana, not and not just the actors here, but also just the working culture and the environment that we were in that allowed us to experiment, and Derek ran with it. I mean, he just yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Ward.
Yeah, and he's got some really, his scenes are not long, but his scenes you pay attention to.
for sure. Because he plays several different characters, I think, throughout the entire piece. So,
Yeah, I think he does, and I just had to call him Mr. Max because there was only one scene in which they mentioned his name. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with that. you know, you can't find
He could
everything on IMDb, so I'll tell you that. So,
I,
but
I'll say it again. He can do anything.
yeah, now there's that scene where both of you are actually you're standing in the theater where all the seats are. And this argument escalates about Mr. Wright being a communist. And of course, this was before the McCarthy era. So this is early 1940s. I think what McCarthy came in, early 1950s. And so this argument escalates that Mr. Wright's being a communist, but Mr. Green says, and this is an incredible exchange of dialogue here, but Mr. Green says, you owe this country as much as it owes you. And this country was founded on the idea of freedom. But Mr. Wright says, though not the practice. Again, the dialogue of this film fits right into today's issues, and talk about an argument. I mean, even today, that argument would almost be relevant. What about you,
So keep it.
Jay?
Okay.
Yeah.
um,
Gotcha.
yes. Yes. I'm not sure how else to respond to that. Yeah. Yes.
Well, okay. Well, let me ask this one to both of you then. As actors, has the dialogue of this film made you a better person?
For sure. I think interacting with Mr. Wright's words has made me a better actor and a better black man. For sure. I understand who I am and what I should not be afraid to ask for in regards to respect. So yeah, I have forever been changed for sure, both personally and creatively.
I love that. What about you, David?
Like I hinted at before, still processing, always will be, always, and for that I'm grateful. As long as I have a lucid mind, that I'll continue to accept that there's a lot more that I don't know, and uh, that I continue to confront um, my thinking, some things that have been ingrained in my thinking, in my life experience. Uh, as an adopted child, I who was adopted in his infancy, my sister as well was adopted. I have reflected so much about my skin color, my gender, and how that impacted who and how I was adopted and how I came into this world. And a lot of that is due to my experience over the last 12 plus years with this project, the stage play and the film, and the writing again of Ian Finley and James A. Hodge, but also each time these questions and these conversations occur, whether at film festivals or in these interviews, I continue to find questions that I need to search out answers to, and I learn more about Richard Wright and Paul Green. I mean, I'm fascinated by the remarkable life and work of these two guys, and what they took on despite their, and we've discussed Paul's weaknesses, but they both had weaknesses and strengths, and in spite of those, the challenges that they faced. It's just remarkable the lives they led, and so I'm this piece and this film continue to remind me of how little I know.
You know, when I when I look at both characters, if you blended them together in the ways that they believe, the ways that they perceive, uh, I can see Martin Luther King where when both Mr. Green and Mr. Wright are combined, because you see the peaceful side that Martin Luther King is trying to at that time trying to promote, and then you also see the facts that he's trying to bring forth. Now, Mr. Wright, and still in that scene where they're arguing, when they're standing where the seats are, and they're arguing about, you know, you owe America. Mr. Green brings up the fact more than once that basically, and I thought it was kind of weird, but it's like, you should be thankful for the privilege that you are paying $8,000 in tax. Not everybody looks at it that way, but it was Mr. Wright. And I think one of the strongest sections of dialogue when they're having this argument, and Mr. Wright goes, America can go hang. America disenfranchises me, humiliates me, corners me, discredits my very humanity at every turn. And for this, I'm expected to praise God, sing the anthem, salute the flag, and pay the tax? I was like, oh my gosh.
Ward, keep in mind, a lot of this dialogue and a lot of this work was generated and created before some of these issues that we're more familiar with, whether kneeling for the Star Spangled Banner or other actions or other experiences that we're seeing now in the last 5 years. A lot of this dialogue, this is filmed pre George Floyd. A lot of these things that we're seeing, that we're very familiar with now, had not yet occurred.
Well, yeah, and that's, and and in earlier part of this interview where you mentioned that you were so nervous, like, hey, we got to get this film done. But in a way, it was able to mature and come out at the right time.
Ward, we're going to have to take you on the road with us, I think.
I'll just be the moderator, right?
Absolutely.
He get that line like completely, like verbatim. I love.
So it's like I said, I haven't seen a film this good since Green Book, and not to compare the two, because the stories are they're different, but there is that underlying tone and situations that can pop up in this story. But this is one of the greatest films. See, this is the type of film, and this only happens to me maybe out of the hundreds of films that I see a year, there's only maybe 3 that I will always remember. This is one of those films.
And you mentioned something else very important, Ward, and again, it comes from Sean and the core creative team. We really wanted to ensure that people are this is going to sound odd saying this, but are comfortable with embracing the discomfort they may leave with after they see this film, whether they see the play or the film. It was crucial to the creative team that the audience feel able to embrace that discomfort.
I agree with that. And this film is done in a way in which the audience will do that. This film is a history lesson and a lesson for us to realize that when we meet somebody, you don't judge by outward appearance. You don't judge by attitude. You need to sit down and listen to their story, because a lot of people's attitudes and actions are based on what they have lived. And that's what Mr. Wright was trying to convey in this whole play scenario, is to bring forth what he lived, because like he said in the balcony, this is a story about me. And he says in the film, writing the story from who wrote it and not writing it for those who will see it. Probably one of the most profound statements in the whole film. And I think writers today need to follow that exact advice.
Yeah, again, there's a beauty in the discomfort. I know that may sound weird to say, but there is a beauty in the discomfort
And I think,
of some of the issues that you're alluding to.
Yeah, go ahead,
and
Jay.
what I love about this story so much is that it starts a conversation and it makes it okay to have a conversation. I think so many times we come into these realms or these rooms and we don't want to actually have the conversation. We come in with our preconceived notions and we don't want to learn anything else. I think this film says, hey, like Richard says, I think we should talk, right? It's okay to have a conversation. Where the conversation goes, or how it ends up, or if you agree to disagree, let that fall where it lay. But be open to the conversation.
But you know what you did, both of you did for this film? You two men having conversation, tense at times, but not once in this whole film did any of the conversation ever feel racist. Even Mr. Green apologized twice. He says, I don't say those words. He even wanted to change the word Negro to American when they were sitting at the desk. So he already, he believed that all men were equal. That's what he believed. Mr. Wright knew different, because he goes, in your eyes they are, but not in my world. But the tone, it never comes across to the audience that about, we see the underlying tone of what racism is, the real story. I think this is probably one of the few films I've ever seen that actually tells the real story, and to have Mr. Wright convey that message and to be allowed to say it. I mean, both of you probably have heard this 1,000 times. Finally, somebody got to say it. And there it is. And no one should be offended by it.
I think that's been said more than once. There's a very fine needle we thread in this project. And I think you've articulated that quite clearly.
Well, it is a stellar film, and I've got to ask, because there is a little tiny element in this film that was a salute to Orson Welles, whose idea was to put the Rosebud sled in the background.
I didn't know if you were going to bring that up or not. Make sure you got mentioned in here. Yeah, we got all sorts of little trivia things, but I'm not sure if the person who wants credit for it. I'm not sure the person who actually came up with the idea wants credit for it. But I will say, yes. Thank you for the reminder. I'm so glad you mentioned it. But look for that Rosebud sled, because this is true. Orson Welles, again, he had just finished. I think he
Citizen
just finished
Kane?
photography of Citizen Kane, and he brought the Rosebud sled with him, and he wanted it on the set for the actual Broadway stage play. Okay, and Rosebud was on that set. Okay, it truly was, and so this ingenious idea came up by this one individual. Said, we're going to do this, and it's in there. You just have to look. It could be a drinking game. No, they're not much of a drinking game, because it's only a brief cameo, but it's there.
I love it. I love it. I always look for those little things in a film that no one is ever going to notice. But people need to realize that, directors, they got a little bit of Stanley Kubrick in them, and they may plant something in the background, either to pay homage to something or it may reflect something coming up in a future scene in the film. So those little things are important. They know people may not pay attention to them, but every time I watch a film, I'm like, okay, is this one going to be an Easter egg hunt? Is there something there that I want to see that I could bring up? I had one the other day. It was so funny because it was a very dramatic, very emotional film. And there's this scene where the couple's walking down this hallway and everything is all gray. And I noticed that the pictures on the wall in the hallway reflected another hallway. And I asked the director, I said, all three pictures in the hallway are the same, reflecting as if you're walking down into the dark, basically a feeling of uncertainty. And she looked at me and she goes, "You're the only one that even noticed that. And we did that for a reason, but you caught it." So I'm like, that's my job.
Yeah,
Well, and props and kudos to Kendra Archer and her production design team on this film. I mean, they just delivered time and again with those kind of details. You know, we're in the middle of watching some of Severance. Our household is watching Severance, and there's all those kind of details that you're looking for. And you know, and the production designer. I mean, yeah, but the production designer, art team, is just key in these moments. And you know, maybe we should invite you to come over here and watch it with us, Ward, so you can point out these things to us.
Hey, I think that would be a great party there. So I may have to take you up on that. Now, for each of you, what projects do you have coming up next that, well, you're allowed to talk about?
You go first, Josh, because I'm not allowed to talk about some of mine.
Yeah, well, so it was mentioned before that I am the artistic director for Reclaiming Our Time Productions. And so we haven't released all the information yet, but we do have some productions coming up. And I'm also in the works with some things that my agent has sent me that we're still hoping for. So, you know, again, as actors, we want to book. And so we don't want to jinx anything, but there are some things that are in the works for sure.
Oh, awesome. What about you, David?
So there's always something on the table, and there's always a stack of ideas that are on the table, and a couple of them we have conversations happening in the next few weeks about some conceptual projects that deal with climate change and some issues of spirituality of a remarkable man that was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, and our relationship with the natural world. Those are just hints. I can't talk any further about it. I wish I could.
I get it. I get it.
I'd be talking for another hour easily. But we're very excited about it. And I will say that there have been inquiries, not only for screenings of this film on certain campuses, but also there have been certain inquiries about the play itself, Native, by Anne Finley, of which this screenplay is partly based on. So yes, they're out there.
I want to see the problem of the hero being taught in film schools, because there is so much in this film from a filmmaking point of view that needs to be dissected, because so many people, from actors to filmmakers, can learn to improve their art by watching this film. Now, when will this film be available for everyone to see?
Well, we're working on that film school stuff, Ward. I'll get on that. That's the next thing on this desk. Okay, I'm working on it. So it has just released on Amazon, Apple TV, and Google Play. So but Amazon, Apple TV. It's there. It will soon be on Broadway, Broadway on Demand. And it will be available for streaming there. I believe there's some other there are a number of platforms worldwide that are looking to take it on, possibly Tubi and some other ones, Plex as well, and maybe some others where it may be taken on. So yeah, we'll keep you updated. You can count on it. You can count on we're going to let Ward Bond know.
Let me know, because I am going to shout this film from the rooftops and from the mountaintop Again, this is one of those films that you cannot forget. It's so incredibly impressive. And ladies and gentlemen, in March of 1941 at the St. James Theater in New York, two 20th century literary giants, groundbreaking author Richard Wright and the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Paul Green collaborate to adapt Wright's best-selling book, Native Son, into a Broadway play. Now, days from opening night, they differ over a single page of the script. The difference of opinion evolves into a spirited contention over issues of race, social justice, politics, and personal and creative agency. The argument threatens to dissolve their friendship. Now, The Problem with the Hero is a period film based in the 1940s, but the issues of race and social justice in this film shows that not much has changed even in 2025. Now, the film brings forth a very powerful message. The tug-o-war between beliefs, assumptions, and even character as they work to convince the other who is right about how the play should end. Now, I love films that are dialogue-driven because words matter. The setting of the theater, an enclosed space in which they argue, is where the finished product will be seen by the audience. The changing of the stage lights further enhance the mood and the storyline. Now, The Problem with the Hero is the must-see film of the year. Now, both David and Jay Martrice give Oscar performances, and I will bank on those words. Their brilliant performances are captivating, they're authentic, and you feel each one's ideas and their plight. They show us that we can agree to disagree without ending a friendship. So David and Jay, I want to thank both of you for sharing this absolute work of cinematic art with me today.
Well, Ward, thank you for having us, and
Yes.
thank you for letting us talk further about essentially what I think is a quintessential American story. It's a quintessential story about the American experience. And thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for seeing it, and thanks for helping us spread the word on it.
I will do that. Any last words, Jay?
No, just thank you so much for having us. Your love for this film is palpable and it's heart-wrenching, and thank you so much. This is what we hope for. We hope that it reaches others and impacts them just as much. So thank you for the time, for the opportunity.
Well, you're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch The Problem of the Hero on Apple TV as well as Amazon. Go online, look it up. Be sure to watch this film, and watch this film with a very close, focused eye. But keep your ears open, because you need your ears to be open to the incredible dialogue, because you're going to learn things that will definitely make you a better person. So, ladies and gentlemen, please visit us at bondoncinema.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our Prime show by the same name. And as for me, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.
Dick, good to see you.
Good to have you here, Mr. Green.
I see they dragged our script backwards through the hedge.
Cut.
This is just so brutal.
Intentionally so.
How will your cause be served by a play that an audience will never accept or even understand? It's 2 hours of horrific, unrepentant violence. They'll be offended.
I'm willing to offend them. Green and I disagree on the ending of the play.
Why did you hire him?
He's a fine playwright. And yet, I intend to burn the entire machine down and stir the ashes.
Jesus, Orson!
Would you like to have a turn at it, Mr. Wright? It's quite good fun.
Well, making people nervous is Dick's specialty. I'm getting nervous myself. Who bought your book by the hundreds of thousands? Who granted you all these honors?
America disenfranchises me, humiliates me, corners me, discredits my very humanity at every turn.
I'm only proposing to do my best on your behalf.
And my behalf is the problem. The right to tell a story has to be earned.
What more could I do to earn it?
When I killed that girl, Mr. Max, I didn't mean to kill her.
I'm trying to help you, one writer to another.
You never forced your audience into the mind of a man who can't be saved.